So, I am picking up where we left off yesterday. Not yesterday, Wednesday. And we left off where Katerina had just started off on her journey. So she is by the river with the guys. And one of the guys has put their hand over her mouth. So I'm just going to wait a few minutes and let people join in. All right. Let's see. Okay, so as you can tell, the book is still on sale for 99 cents. Let's see if I can copy the link. All right. So I've got that done. If y'all want to read with me, go ahead and click on the link and you can read along with me. I'm using my other computer to look up Facebook comments. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Drink first. My father is nicknamed the Eagle, and my mother would like this necklace to show unity, but also because it's cute. Sorry, Princess. But he raised a good point. If you are tired too, then you won't be able to focus on your quest to find the one who threatens your family. Don was a little self-conscious over the fact that he was touching the princess without permission. Katerina pulled back. Fine, I understand. That doesn't mean that I approve. I just understand where you are coming from. She walked over to where her sleeping bag was and moved it closer to the fire. If she was going to sleep all night, she might as well be warm. She ignored the boys as they decided who got which shift. I'll take the first shift, Dimitri said. He looked at each of the other guys. I'll take the last shift, Eduardo decided. He nodded at his decision. Then he walked over to a spot where he wanted his sleeping bag and started to get ready for bed. Don took the third shift and Luis took the second. They also went to get ready for bed, smiling at each other. They could see each other as their friend. As everyone else settled down to sleep, Dmitri tended to the fire and kept an eye out. He watched for wild animals and other people. He did not want anyone to sneak up on them and kill them all. As he thought about his journey so far, his eyes landed on each of his companions. Eduardo and he didn't always get along. Don was his good friend from childhood. Luis was a good kid, quiet but kind. His gaze turned to the final member of their traveling group. Katerina was asleep, her face towards the fire. Her dark eyelashes brushed against her high cheekbones. She was beautiful, and a force to be reckoned with. The dream started off really nice. She was 5 years old and playing hide and seek with a 2-year-old Thomas, a 9-year-old George, and an 11-year-old Frederick. She and Thomas would usually hide together, keeping the other one quiet, while George or Frederick, whichever wasn't counting, hid by themselves. Then the dream twisted, and she heard herself yelling that she hated the new baby for taking her mummy's attention away. Then her mom, who was in the delivery room, gave birth to a healthy baby boy and a stillborn baby girl. Everyone was sad and crying except for Katerina, who was staring in shock. She killed her little sister. When Katerina woke up the next morning with a gasp of fear, she saw Eduardo coming out of the woods with a rabbit. "Did you leave us unprotected?" She was a little upset, narrowing her eyes. "No, I stayed within sight, and I got breakfast." Eduardo glanced at her and then went about getting the rabbit skinned, cut up, and cooking. Katerina shook her head as she saw the others getting up as well. She didn't say anything to the others about him going into the woods while everyone else slept, even if he had stayed within eyesight. After they ate, they decided to go ahead and get back on the journey. There was still much to do. Katerina rode with the prince on each side of her. Don and Luis rode behind the trio. They were talking together about what their lives in their own countries were like. They were getting along great. As they rode to the next village, Katerina spoke to each prince to try to know them, even if she still didn't want to marry either of them. She watched the scenery pass by, woods on one side and a field on the other side. It took about half a day to get to the village of Villesta, the closest village to the one around her castle. Along the way, the two princes told her about how they found out that they had a partner already picked out for them, and that they had to compete to marry her. I, of course, had no problem with the fact that my future bride was chosen for me, Eduardo said. That's just the way things are. Dmitri frowned. Well, I was shocked at first, and then a bit angry. I wanted to continue with my hobbies, and I didn't realize that I could still do so, even after I become engaged. He smiled at Katerina. I got used to the idea over the last year. I think it would be amazing to find out if I am lucky enough to have a wife. His smile widened at her blush. When they got to the village of Villesta, Katerina looked around at her surroundings. All around them she saw people rushing to and fro, going about their business. She smiled slightly at how carefree some people could be. Then she sighed. How was she going to find out who was threatening her family? She had nothing to go on. Katerina turned to her companions. How do we start asking people? Just do it, I guess, Dmitri replied. He looked around as well and got down from his stallion. He walked over to a man and said, "Excuse me, sir. Have you heard anything about mysterious ladders to the castle?" The man shook his head. I didn't. But maybe the lord and lady would know. They live up on that hill. He pointed up above the village to a nicely decorated yard with a beautiful yellow house on the hill. He looked back at the young group. Good luck. Thank you, Dmitri smiled. Then he turned to the others. Let's go. The three royals and two attendants rode up the hill to the yellow house. Katerina dismounted and walked up to the front door. She knocked, and when someone opened the door, she asked, Hello, is the lord or lady home? The butler replied in the affirmative. Katerina explained what was going on, and the five were led inside after stable hands came to hold onto all of the horses. Katerina let the lord and lady of Velesta village know what is going on and realized that the lady is Julie's older sister. The lady looked at her husband and then said, We have heard of a stranger coming and sending letters to your castle, young princess. She also mentioned that she would ask the Duchess about the letters. The Duchess was Duchess Maria's great-great-granddaughter. Yes, please. Yes. Please tell my dear cousin that we thank her for any information she can provide. Katerina smiled. Duchess Maria was related to Katerina's many times great-grandfather. Later, the five teenagers left Velesta and kept asking people along the way at each village they came to. Katerina was told at several villages that there was a man or two that came to that village and sent letters to her family. The villagers didn't think anything was wrong with the letters, so they didn't report the issue. As they traveled from Katerina's country to Eduardo's, some people swore that the mysterious man had black hair. Others swore that the man had blonde hair. Some swore it was gray hair. And still others swore that there were two men with brown hair. Other than the contradicting reports, the trip was going well for the group. Katerina was pleased that they were getting somewhere. She thought about how some villagers agreed on a description of a mysterious gray-haired man that sent some letters to her country. Who is this mysterious man? Why was he trying to ruin her family? Katerina, however, was happy that they were getting somewhere, at least. She had a very positive outlook on the journey. Eduardo walked over to Katerina. While we wait for rooms at the village inn, do you want to go on a date around the village? Katerina looked up at him. Sure, she replied with a small smile. She had come to be used to the two princes, but she still didn't want to marry either of them. She followed him, and he took her around to each stall. Eduardo led her to a stall with jewelry. The stall was well made, not hastily set up like some were. It looked like the owner, or someone she trusted, made the stall with care. The 4 posts were strong, and the 3 tables on the front and each side were sturdy and straight. A nice tablecloth covered all 3 tables, showcasing the jewelry beautifully. Would you like something from here? She looked at the jewelry. There were a few great pieces, mostly necklaces of jade or rubies, and even a few wooden figures that were turned into necklaces. She looked all of them over and saw an eagle necklace. My mother would love that one. The eagle? Eduardo asked. You don't want a ruby set? No, she replied. My father is nicknamed the Eagle, and my mother would like this necklace to show unity, but also because it's cute. Okay, Eduardo asked for the price. Thank you. You know, white roses mean I'm worthy of you, right? When the stall owner, a nice-looking woman with kind brown eyes, gave it, Katerina reached for her bag. but Eduardo gave the money over quicker than she could. You didn't have to do that, Katerina said. We're on a date. I take care of the person I'm on a date with. Eduardo picked up the necklace and handed it over to her. Katerina wondered if he was just being nice or if he had an ulterior motive. Okay, thanks. She took the necklace and put it in her bag. Then they walked around some more, and Katerina looked at some weapons next. When they got back to the inn after their rooms were ready, Katerina put her purchases away in her travel bags. They relaxed, having a good lunch, and then Dmitri asked, "Would you like to go on a date with me?" Sure. Katerina stood and followed Dmitri as they walked out of the inn. She noticed that he had stopped by his room briefly, but when he came out, he had flowers in one hand and a box in the other. What? Oh, they're beautiful! He handed them both over, and she smelled the beautiful white roses. Thank you. You know, white roses mean I'm worthy of you, right? She looked up from the flowers with a raised eyebrow. He blushed. I just want you to know that I'll always be there for you, no matter who you choose. Katerina blushed in response. She couldn't believe he said that and actually meant it. Thank you. She remembered the box and asked, What's in the box? He chuckled. Go ahead and open it. Okay. When Katerina opened the box, she noticed the little milk chocolate truffles. Some had lines of white chocolate on the tops. Others had drops of caramel on top. She looked up at him with a true smile. Thank you so much. I love chocolate. She stood on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. She didn't think she would like either prince, but Dmitri actually got her. How did you know that I love chocolate? The blush had deepened when she kissed his cheek, but he managed to say, Your mother told me. He looked down into her eyes. He almost got lost in them, but he mentally shook himself. Let's head out, shall we? Katerina nodded, and they left the inn. She followed Dmitri to a pond where large weeping willows stood, hanging over the water. The branches would sometimes dip into the pond when the wind blew softly, sending slight ripples across the beautiful blue water. It was wonderful. The breeze smelled nice too. There were flowers growing around the pond as well. Katerina stood staring at the pond. It was gorgeous. She looked at Dmitri with awe and excitement on her face. This is amazing. I can't believe this is actually real. Dmitri laughed. Why don't we walk around it and get to know each other better? Sorry, I keep looking over this way. My cat is over here sleeping on my bed. Okay, she said breathlessly. She turned to walk towards the pond. She was absent-mindedly aware that Dmitri was behind her until he spoke up. So, what is it like having brothers? Katerina was startled into laughter. It depends. My older brothers both tease me and protect me. My younger brothers are a handful, but I'm grateful to have someone that I can help guide. She smiled at him. I love all of my brothers. I can't help wishing that my baby sister had survived. Her face darkened with emotion briefly before she asked him, So, what is it like having sisters? He stared at her for a few moments, worried, but he accepted her slight change of topic. I love them. Catherine and Natalia are tomboys. They're always wanting to help outside and play a bit rougher than girls usually play. Maria and Tatiana are more girly of the four. Katerina smiled. My older brothers taught me how to fight with a sword, shoot arrows, and throw knives. They wanted me to be able to protect myself. I find that amazing, Dmitri admitted. So, this is what you were waiting to tell us until you got comfortable? Yes, Katerina said, looking anywhere but at Dmitri. She was glad that he didn't find it weird that she didn't act like a normal princess. But she was still a little self-conscious. Don't worry, like I said earlier, I have two tomboy sisters. Dmitri reached out to touch her hair. He slid a lock behind her ear and smiled when she glanced at him. He glanced at her lips, but turned his head away before he could do anything stupid before she was ready for it. She licked her lips, thinking about the almost kiss. Was she disappointed that he didn't kiss her? She shook her head to clear it. What? No. She was still hoping to find a way out of an arranged marriage. She was so lost in thought that she almost fell when she tripped over a root. Ah! The roses and box of chocolates fell from her arms as she tilted forward. Dmitri reached out. Just a moment. Okay, sorry about that, but I had a random guy come up to the door. And we have a no soliciting sign on our door. So if he can't read, oh, he's so stupid. I'll check that later. Okay, that was creepy. Alright, so now to find out where I was. Okay, Dimitri reached out and wrapped an arm around her waist. He pulled her up and turned her around until she was pressed against his chest. Are you okay, princess? I am, thank you. Her hands were on his chest and stayed like that for a moment while she recuperated from the almost fall. Her breathing was a little ragged from panic. Then she realized the position she was in and she jumped back. Sorry, she exclaimed, embarrassed. She was red-faced and didn't look at him. It's okay. Don't worry about it. He stared at her face and smiled. He gently touched her cheek. Then he picked up the roses and the box of chocolates that had surprisingly stayed shut. They soon decided to go back to the inn and go to their own rooms. Katerina flopped onto her bed with a closed box of chocolates and the white, thornless roses. What was wrong with her? She was supposed to find out a way to break free of this contract. Why was she so responsive to Dmitri? She had to just try to ignore this weird feeling for the rest of this journey. She had to ignore it. Had to. She set the roses aside and opened the box of chocolates. Which one do I try first? Then she just reached in and grabbed one. Its caramel design melted in her mouth, and she moaned in happiness. Dmitri seriously understood her. It was ridiculous. She smiled around the truffle. What was she going to do now? She set the box alongside the roses and flopped backwards. Oh, I have to get some water for the roses. She got up and filled a pouch with water. Then she put the roses in it and supported the pouch so that it stood up almost on its own and crawled into bed. She was home again, but not as a 5-year-old. She was learning how to throw knives from George. When she hit the bullseye, she turned to George, but it wasn't George anymore. It was Eduardo. Eduardo, what are you doing here? I live here now, remember? Eduardo replied. He smiled at her, but the smile quickly faded. What did I say about practicing your knife throwing? I don't want you to do any of that stuff. He walked up to her, grabbing her wrist hard enough to bruise, and tugged her away from the practice field. She hollered in pain and woke up. She shook off the weird dream, not understanding how important it could be. They had to continue on. She felt as though time was running out. It wasn't long before they moved on to the next village. Katerina looked around as they traveled and noticed that it was getting colder at night. She shivered. As they continued on, Louise moved forward to whisper into Eduardo's ear. Eduardo stopped the group. What's wrong? Katerina asked. We're stopping for the night. You need to warm up. Eduardo smiled at her. Dmitri nodded. I agree with Eduardo. You need to stay warm. They all got down from their horses and started to set up a campsite. Maybe we should let our families know where we are, or how we are, and where we are, Katerina suggested. Good idea, Dmitri nodded. Katerina pulled out paper and a pen. She wrote, Mother and Father, we have reached Eduardo's country. It's nice. Eduardo seems rather proud of his country's achievements, but it seems like he is taking credit for his forefathers' work. I miss home. But we have gotten a few clues as to who threatens. Sorry about that. Eduardo scared me when he dropped his saddle at our campsite. We have yet to reach his capital, just asking around at each village we come to. Maybe we'll reach his capital tomorrow. Eduardo took me on a date around a village in his country, and Dmitri took me on a walk around a pond. Dmitri also gave me chocolates and white roses. Mother, why did you tell him that I love chocolate? Anyway, I need to go now. We are about to eat and then sleep for the night. I'll write again later. I love you. Katerina. Letters. Julius, one more chance. Admit you were wrong and atone for your sin, or I'll kill you and your entire family. You have ignored my warnings, even my warning about your daughter going on her journey. Don't be mad if she dies on said journey. You have a lot of enemies out here. I have a lot of good friends that would love to do anything I ask. You have no one to blame but yourself for your family's suffering. The people sitting around the letter looked pale, worried about what the letter spoke about. They didn't want anything to happen to Princess Katerina. They were all worried about how someone could get to her on a journey where no one knew where exactly she was. They looked back at the letter and wondered how everything was going to work out. On the journey, Dmitri sat writing to his family. Dear Mother and Father, we are well. We're traveling through Prince Eduardo's country right now. As you probably know by now, someone is threatening Princess Katerina's family, and we are traveling around to find out who is doing it. Let me tell you a little about Princess Katerina. She's amazing. At first, we didn't really hit it off. I admit that I did think that she was sneaking around the castle doing something wrong, and I didn't recognize her at first, or until she said her name. You can laugh, but all I saw was a beautiful girl sneaking out of the castle to avoid a flirtatious prince. She has a fiery temper when you get her mad, and she can be a little stuck up at times, but she's kind and gentle when she thinks no one is watching her. Earlier, I took her on a date around a pond and gave her white roses and chocolate truffles. Her mother had hinted that Princess Katerina loved chocolate, so I took the chance. It seems to have paid off. During our date, she tripped and dropped the flowers and box of chocolates. I grabbed her so that she wouldn't fall, and we stood like that for a while before she stepped away and I grabbed everything that fell. Thankfully, the box of chocolates didn't open and spill out onto the ground. I'm really starting to like her, and I think we can really make marriage work, if she agrees. Just a few more weeks, I believe, until we arrive home. Then you'll see what I mean. I love all of you. See you soon, Dmitri. Eduardo sat writing to his family and glanced up every now and then to look at Katerina. Mother and Father, I am well. We are in our country asking around at each village if anyone has heard of whoever is threatening Princess Katerina's family. We should be at the capital city tomorrow, and then you can see her for yourself. I think that you'll like her. She's a bit headstrong, but she's a good person. Maybe she'll end up engaged to me when this journey is over. Maybe not. The other prince is really charismatic, so he has been gaining her favor lately. I might have a plan for getting her attention, but I just have to put it into motion when I get home. Eduardo. He couldn't wait to see how this trip went, and he looked at his sleeping companions, smirking over the plans coming together. Katerina watched as the two princes wrote their families, and she noticed that when Eduardo finished, he wrote some more. What was he up to? She shook her head and got dinner ready for the group. When the cook was sick at home, Katerina would sometimes cook instead. It was calming sometimes. She made soup, something quick and easy, and smelled wonderful. She called everyone to the meal and smiled at the moans of enjoyment. She giggled when they wanted more and said, I made plenty for everyone. Eduardo spoke up. This is good. Thank you, Katerina said graciously. Dmitri smiled. He's right. Your soup is amazing. He went back to eating his second helping. The two attendants nodded enthusiastically. Katerina blushed. It's not that special. I just used my cook's special recipe. The boys split up the shifts for the night, and the ones not on the first shift went to sleep with full bellies. They were happy. They were all happy to be going to to Eduardo's castle finally. Cat, what are you doing? Some of them were tired of the trip so far and wanted to rest for a bit. Apparently, the trip was a long and tiring journey, and they just wanted to get it over with. One by one, they drifted off to sleep, snuggling into their warm sleeping bags. Later, at midnight, a figure whistled nearly silently, and a bird flew down to land on his arm. The man tied two letters to the bird. Take the first letter to the boys, and then take the second letter to the boss. The bird flew off, not making a sound. The man snuck back to the clearing where his companions slept and sat down to watch out for the group. He was exhilarated over sneaking around to send off the letters. He couldn't wait to see how the trip went, and he looked at his sleeping companion, smirking over the plans coming together. The next morning, everyone got ready to go. The two attendants helped everyone gear up and even talked as they worked. They talked about how the two princes acted towards the princess and towards each other. They laughed about some of the looks the princes gave each other. A rider rode up to the group at a fast gallop. The two princes immediately stepped in front of Katerina with swords drawn. When the rider halted, Dmitri demanded, State your business. The young boy removed his hood. Forgive me, but some rather dangerous men are looking for you three. Of course, I sent them off in a different direction, but you should get away quickly. Dmitri nodded. Thank you. He tossed the kid a gold coin for your heads up. The kid pulled his hood up and took off back to the village they had left the day before. Dmitri turned to the others. Let's get out of here. They hurried up and took off. The horses galloped as quickly as possible, and a few hours later they arrived at the capital of Eduardo's country. They pulled up to the castle gate, where the guards let them in. Prince Eduardo led them up to the front door. When stable hands came to get their horses, he led them through the front door and into the castle. He looked around and saw the butler. Have my family meet us in the dining hall. Please, he added as an afterthought. All right, I have to go open the door because my cat is pacing. There you go, baby. Okay. The butler left, and they made their way to the dining hall, where maids immediately brought the five weary travelers some hot food and drinks. They ate as quickly as they could without choking, and as they went back for seconds, Eduardo's family appeared. Mother, father, these are my companions, Princess Katerina, Prince Dmitri, and Don. Katerina wiped her mouth, then she stood and curtsied. It's a pleasure to meet you, your majesties, she said. Dmitri stood and bowed. I'm honored to meet you. Eduardo's family was very nice, and everyone talked for hours. Then Eduardo let them know about the followers, but that they had been misdirected. His family stiffened at the news of followers, but relaxed slightly when the misdirection was mentioned. Of course, they wouldn't relax fully until the followers were gone for good. They stayed the night in the castle, and in the morning Eduardo took Caterina on a date to see a tournament. Though she was a bit tired, because she had had another dream, this time with Dmitri taking the place of Frederick teaching her to ride a horse. Caterina shook her head. These dreams were getting crazy. Caterina looked at all of the people that came to the tournament. Who really wants to watch two guys try to knock each other off their horse? She sat down next to Eduardo and looked towards the first two competitors. They lowered their lances and charged forward. The horses thundered down the arena on either side of the fence. Before the crash of a lance slamming into the opposite shield popped the opponent out of his saddle. She noticed that Eduardo was one of the ones cheering for the winner. Huh. He really likes this sport. She couldn't help but think that it was a crazy sport. By the end of the tournament, Katerina had to admit that she had a little bit of fun. She smiled when they gave the winner a trophy. She clapped alongside everyone else. Then she got up when Eduardo did. Well, that was fun, she smiled at him. She was a little tired because of a new weird dream, but she had had some of that coffee that Dmitri carried and drank from. Speaking of Dmitri, she saw Dmitri and waved to him. Dmitri made his way through the crowd towards her, smiling the whole time. Good morning, Princess Katerina. Have you eaten? She shook her head. In that case, Dmitri replied with a grin. Do you want to go see a bakery that I just found? Katerina smiled. Sure, why not? Eduardo scowled, watching as Dmitri swept her away to eat at a bakery. His expression darkened and he stared after them. He stormed back to the castle and into his room. Dmitri led Katerina to a small little bakery that had a few outdoor tables. As they walked inside, he asked, What is your favorite thing to eat at a bakery? She thought for a moment. Maybe buttery croissants or a blueberry muffin. She smiled at him, not noticing the looks they were getting from the other customers. They walked over to the counter and Katerina saw that they had a blueberry muffin. I'll take that, she said. Dmitri smiled and nodded. He ordered 2 blueberry muffins and 2 teas. Then he paid before Katerina could and led her to a table by a big window. So, how do you like Eduardo's country so far? Katerina frowned. I like the country. It's beautiful. I only wonder when we are going to be able to find the gray-haired man that is sending the threatening letters. We will find him, Dmitri said, placing his hand on hers, gently. She looked up and then down at their hands before her eyes made their way back to his face. What's going on? Why does his hand feel so warm? Why am I feeling so relieved that he is here and supporting me? She was so lost in thought that she was surprised when his thumb rubbed over the back of her hand. She jumped. Dmitri smiled. You were a little lost there for a moment. What's wrong? She blushed. Why are you acting like this? Do you really want this marriage? Why would you want this? She was confused and distracted by the hand on hers. Well, I do like you, and think that maybe we can make a marriage work. I think we should at least try. Dmitri smiled at her. She slowly pulled her hand away and picked at her muffin. I don't know, she said. What if this is fleeting? What if I still don't want to marry? Then maybe I will have to just convince you to give me a chance. He picked up his tea and took a sip. She nibbled on the muffin, looked at it in surprise, and took a slightly bigger bite. This is so good. Dmitri swallowed. Leaning forward, he brushed crumbs off her lips with his thumb. Enjoying that? His voice was a little deeper, and he hoped she didn't notice. Katerina's eyes were wide. She cleared her throat. It's really good. She was still in shock that he had touched her lips. The people in the bakery were staring in shock. The prince was openly flirting with the princess. But wasn't she Prince Eduardo's fiancée? Dmitri heard the whispers, but pretended not to have. He spoke up. I know this is all new to you. I mean, having an arranged marriage contract and having to choose between two princes that must be overwhelming for you. He heard the whispers start up again. Just think about it, and you'll choose the one that's best suited for you. As they finished up at the cafe, having talked about what they were going to do next, they made their way back to the castle. Eduardo ran out to meet them. Thank goodness you were back. I just received word that the people following us have turned around and have started on their way here. We must leave now before they arrive. His face held a panicked look, as if he was worried about his family, but his eyes held a glint of something mysterious. The woods were dark, and the wind was blowing gently. Katerina looked around, but didn't see anything at first. Then a voice came out of nowhere, and a mouth formed from the darkness. Katerina thought she was just imagining the glint, so she nodded, and they went to pack up their belongings before getting their horses ready. She let Eduardo lead the way out of his capital city and on the road towards the next village. Eduardo led them for hours, hours of sitting in a saddle, riding hard, and feeling the pressure of having pursuers. He passed the first village away from his capital city and made a slight right towards another village. This should confuse them. Maybe the pursuers will pass us by. Katerina asked, May we please stop for a while? Eduardo agreed. We can stay here for the night. Tomorrow, we might even reach the last village in my country before crossing to Prince Dimitri's. Oh, thank goodness, Katerina exclaimed. Dmitri laughed, and they all went into the village. Dimitri's attendant went to see about an inn. Eduardo's attendant went to see about the stables. When they were able to, Katerina dismounted and had to rub her sore butt. Ow! Then she stopped and looked around. Wow, this place is pretty. Eduardo told her all about the village as they walked around. The attendants had taken care of everything, so they only had to sleep and get meals. There was so much to see. Katerina, Dmitri, and Eduardo walked to each stall to see what they had to offer. There were stalls full of baked goods, stalls with jewelry from mysterious places, stalls with homemade items, and stalls with clothes. However, There weren't any stalls with weapons. After taking a look around and checking out the stalls, Eduardo led them over to the inn. Here we are. This inn is the best in the land. As they walked in, the innkeeper spoke up when he saw Eduardo. Ah, Prince Eduardo, a letter arrived for you. I think it's something about your family. Eduardo stepped forward and took it. Thanks. He read the piece of paper and let out a sigh. They're safe. They got out in time too? Katerina asked in concern. Yes, he replied. Dmitri frowned slightly. How did they know where you'd be? He was slightly suspicious of the coincidence. Apparently, they sent the same note to all of the surrounding villages, Eduardo answered after looking back at the paper. Dmitri nodded. That made sense. Sort of. Kind of. Sorry. All 5 travelers were each led to a medium-sized room with its own bathroom. Dmitri was at the far end of a hall, with Dawn right next to him. Then there was Luis's room, and Eduardo staying between Luis and Katerina. Dmitri walked into his room and looked around. It was a decent size. He smiled as he put his bags on the only chair in the room. After he got ready for bed, too tired to be hungry, he fell into bed. Don was staring at the huge room. Well, it was huge for him. He hurriedly put his bags down. Then he went to eat dinner because he was starving. On the way, he met up again with Luis. Luis had gone straight to his window. He wanted to see the view from the second floor. He smiled. It was a nice view of the stalls and the bustling people. He set his bags down and decided to go eat dinner, meeting Dawn along the way. A figure looked at the paper in their hand. It will be done. Be ready, sir, it said. The man smirked at the note. It was all coming together nicely. Eduardo walked into his room, put his bags down, took a shower, and then went down to eat. He was hungry, but he wanted to get clean first. Eduardo walked around. Katerina was tired and sore. She got ready for bed, took a bath, and crawled in between the sheets. She did a quick tarot reading, frowning at the ominous message. Putting the cards beside the bed, she was asleep before her head hit the soft pillows. The woods were dark, and the wind was blowing gently. Katerina looked around, but didn't see anything at first. Then a voice came out of nowhere, and a mouth formed from the darkness. You know who I am. You know who you want to choose. Let your heart decide and follow through with that decision. Katerina couldn't tell if it was a male or female speaking. I don't know who you are. Tell me. But the voice was silent for a while. You know me. I know your dreams. I know your fears. I am the one who knows you the most. I am. The voice cut off suddenly, as Katerina was abruptly woken by the smell of smoke. She looked around. Where was the smell coming from? Then she sat up. The smell was getting stronger. She jumped out of bed, threw a light robe on, and ran outside of the room. What's going on? Dmitri caught up to her. Someone set the inn on fire. Grab whatever you can in 1 minute, because we are leaving now. He wanted her to leave the inn in her nightdress. The look on his face suggested that he was serious. She whirled around, grabbed her 2 bags. As she slid her shoes on. Then she slid her shoes on. Glancing around, there was nothing else that she had to grab except the roses that Dmitri had given her. She grabbed them and Dmitri was back. "Come on," he said, worried about her. He had a bag in his hand as well. She nodded and followed him. The smoke started to get thicker, and they started coughing. Dmitri grabbed her arm when she started falling behind. He had no words, because he couldn't. They finally made it outside and saw that Eduardo was already there. He had all of his stuff around him, all 3 bags. "My child!" a woman yelled. She was looking back at the inn. A child was crying from the first floor. "He got lost in the smoke. Someone please go save him." When Katerina heard the kid crying, she tried to turn back to go to him, but Dmitri stopped her. "Stay out here. I'll go." He dropped his bag and ran towards the inn before Katerina could stop him. Katerina waited impatiently for Dmitri to come back out. She was terrified for him. She didn't look away from the burning inn and waited for a glimpse of him and the child. A little ways away, a few men waited in suspense. They were not, like Katerina, waiting to see if Dmitri came out of the inn, but to see that he didn't. Those were their orders. Well, their orders were not to stick around. They wanted to make sure that the prince died. Then the leader of the small group cursed as he put a letter he had read again back into his jacket pocket. They were all looking at the burning inn to see a shadow appear. The leader cursed again before they all left in the confusion. Katerina saw a shadow in the red of the fire. He was on his way back out. Thank goodness. Then the shadow changed form to show 2 figures. He had found the boy. Katerina sighed in relief as Dmitri walked out of the inn with the young boy. Katerina and the boy's mom ran over. "Are you both okay?" Katerina asked. Dmitri handed the child over to his mom. Then he turned to Katerina. "I'm fine," he said hoarsely. "Just a little smoky." She let out an awkward giggle. "You scared me," she said. "Don't do that again." His gaze softened. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't let you go in there." Katerina nodded. "I understand." They made their way to a well where a man handed them 2 cups of water before hurrying the cup over to the boy. Dmitri took a sip of his water and led Katerina away from the group. He saw Eduardo watching them and motioned him over. The 2 attendants also found their way over to Dmitri's side. "We need to discuss what to do next." I think we should head to the last village before we reach your country," Eduardo suggested. He looked worried about the fire that had somehow started up at the inn. "I agree," Katerina replied, looking at each male in front of her. "It's not safe here anymore." She shivered. "And we need to get to a place where you can change," Dmitri added. "That first." Katerina nodded fiercely. Then she couldn't help but giggle. "The inn is burning down, even with the villagers trying to stop it, and I'm worried about my state of dress." She shook her head. "Let's get to the stables. Maybe there will be a room where I can change." They walked over to where the stables were, and Katerina ran to change while the others got their horses ready. When she got back, they headed out after packing their bags into the saddlebags. The 5 rode out of Tarami village, and rode on towards the last village in Eduardo's country. They rode swiftly, but not all out, because they wanted to make sure that they had enough energy for the rest of the day. They wanted to quickly continue on their journey to find out who was threatening Katerina's family. And that is it. That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's reading. Small cliffhanger, but not bad. Let's see. The next chapter ending is, well, the next ending of the day is not as cliffhangery. Is that a word? But yeah, I am excited. I can't wait to see what y'all think of the story. I'm going to get off of here soon and switch out the laundry and then get to writing because I have not written yet. I am also going to check on the food that I have cooking for dinner. Let my cat in because he's meowing like crazy after he wanted out in the first place. Let's see. This over here, it says 1 day, 10 hours, and 58 minutes until it goes back up to its regular price of $3.99. That means that you have until Sunday, this Sunday, to get this book for 99 cents. After that, it goes right back up to $3.99, and I am running a small sale for book 2 starting Monday. And that'll be for $2.99. Oh, cat. Okay, so this will be for $2.99 until my third book comes out. So for just 1 week only. I am freaking out, but yeah, I have like a ton of work to do and I need to go do it. So I am going to sign off of here and oh, whoa. Okay, I think I know what you're asking about. So the biggest surprise in book 2, for those that have read book 1, well, we'll just say one part because it has nothing to do with the storyline itself. It's no longer third person. It is in 4 different POVs. Yeah, no spoilers. Has nothing to do with the storyline. All right, so Thank you. It was pretty hard to write, just saying. It's pretty hard to write. And book 3 is even worse. Oh, thank you. Yes, I need to finish this book before next Sunday. So I still have a week. But yes. And I'm glad you did pop by. I am so happy. I liked book 1 and need to get to yes. I can't wait to see what you think about the 4 POVs. It was a little nerve-wracking, and one of the characters got me a little hurt inside, having to write his character. And there was one part of the story that I freaked out on, and I had to step away. But yeah. And I will be reading that book after this when it is over. So stay tuned for that. And thank you for joining in. Even if it's just to stop by and say hi. And I need to switch out the laundry. All right. I love you. Mwah. Bye.